Hey everybody, it's Murgle, and today in this one we'll be discussing class strengths and weaknesses from vanilla. I told you a little while ago, we'd be talking about this and compiled together a little list here of things to talk about. I was assisted by an individual by the name of Florian. Just overall, I think these will help you get a general idea of what class you may want to pick and what not, because a lot of things have changed since vanilla, right? Certain classes in vanilla were expected to play certain specs because their other specs just weren't good. Let's put it that way. So you were kind of required and pushed into certain areas, right? But anyways, let's just jump right into it. I hope you enjoy this one. Let's begin. Now, for the first class I would like to discuss, I will talk about Rogue. This was the main class I played during Classic, right? And I will tell you that it was a lot of fun. Rogues were very strong in Classic. They really stood out for doing really nice DPS by comparison to a lot of other classes. And that's why there were a whole lot of them at the time. There was a lot of rogues in Classic. Rogues are really good, though, in the sense that they aren't heavy gear requirement class, right? In Classic, you could pretty much go in rags and still do competitive DPS. And another great thing about rogues is they have, two really distinct builds that are pretty good. You could get a set of swords, still do fine, or if you got a set of daggers, you're still going to be competitive, right? And they were a whole lot of fun in PvP as well. So when it comes down to PvP, this comes to the fact that they, again, aren't heavily gear dependent, so you can kick somebody's butt who's wearing really nice gear in your ranks again. It just came down to the fact that that's how rogues turned out in vanilla. When it comes to leveling, though, they are pretty slow in the aspect because they can't solo a lot of content, right? Soloing as a rogue, pretty rough. And on top of leveling your character, you actually have to level secondary abilities, right? Poison isn't just a buff like it is now. It's something you had to go out and do a quest to complete, and after the quest is complete, you unlock poison making, and then you have to level up poison making. You have to buy reagents to level your poison making, and lock picking is very similar, right? When lock picking levels, it's not just automatic when you level up. You unlock more skill points, right? You can get a higher skill cap when you level up, but you actually have to go out and lock pick stuff around the world at certain levels. It's just how you do it. Gotta level up. I enjoy that, though. I think it's great that you have to level your abilities. It gives the sense of, progressing your character, literally, because you're going out and leveling your stuff. Overall, though, a very fun class. Highly recommend if you want to, do substantial DPS, if that's what you're looking for, because they're one of the top classes for DPSing. But anyways, great class. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at Warlock, because this is my current main, right? Murgle's a Warlock. When looking at them, though, they weren't a whole lot of Warlocks during Classic, right? They did have very many useful features, though. So they were actually required at some cases, because Banish is one of the abilities of Warlocks, and it was absolutely necessary in a couple instances. Summoning Stones, very, very useful, because depending on what build they make Classic, there are no Summoning Stones in Classic WoW, right? It's just, you run there. So Warlocks stuck out very much for having their summoning gate. DPS-wise, they were okay, right? They fell behind mages in most occasions, but what is really nice, though, about them is at level 40, you'll be able to get a nice free mount. See, while other classes are still hoofing it on their feet, you'll be mounted up immediately, which can be super useful. On top of it, whenever they decide to release Dire Maul, could be many months down the line, though, when Classic releases, you'll be able to complete the level 60 Warlock class mount questline. This one isn't free, as the supplies and everything will add up to a hefty amount, but this amount is still far less than the actual cost of a 100% speed training. So, in the end, you get a 100% speed mount, best mount you're going to get in the game, for much less than everybody else. The real fun thing about them, though, is Warlocks have a ton of lore quests, right? You have to learn how to summon your demons throughout leveling. You don't just get the ability. On top of that, your spells are funded by soul shards, so you'll have to sacrifice one of your bag slots for a special soul pouch because you'll need so many of them, especially when it's raid night and stuff. You gotta stock up before the raid and stuff. Overall, if you're looking for a class with lots of like quests to send you off into various locations around the world, fun, enticing quest lines, Warlock, definite pick choice, right? And again, semi-good DPS, still falls behind Mage though. Now, let's go on to Mage actually, because this is the class I will be maining on Classic release next time around, when it comes around. Overall though, they're very good in a whole lot of situations. As for actual raiding gameplay, they are very boring in that aspect though, and you're typically going to be spamming just a single button. That's your raiding experience right there. Their DPS with that single button though is quite good. They do a ton of DPS. They can be a whole lot of fun in PvP though, as on release, if they follow the original patching schedule, there are no diminishing returns. There weren't diminishing returns back then, so you literally can sheep an individual over and over just for the memes. Literally can't do anything about it. They're just gonna stand there as a sheep for as long as you want them to, and you could do that. Leveling though, they are quite nice as they can conjure their own food. Means you don't have to fork out an arm and a leg to the vendors constantly. On top of that, you're going to be able to teleport to places, right? You can learn the ability to teleport. You can learn portals. All these things cost reagents though, but in the end, mages are so much fun. You can build so many different specs in PvP, right? Like there's Palm Pyro, which is a mage spec where you basically fuel yourself off of procs, not procs, but on-use abilities that instantly cast Pyro Shot and you like one-hit people. It's a whole lot of fun. Of course, it's a long cooldown, but anyways, they just very, very exciting experience. In terms of farming class, I would say if you're a gold farming type that enjoys that kind of thing, Mage is excellent for farming. Amazing farming class. They're one of the better ones because with Blizzard and the Frost spec, you can pull huge amounts of things and kill it all. It's very good. Now, let's get into warriors. As in a raiding aspect, you're going to be seeing a whole lot of warriors. A lot of warriors are going to be in your raid. In the raiding scene, they're really the only viable tank. You're going to have several of them for tanking. Most guilds will take 2 to 4 of these just for tanks. They're all going to be gearing up for tanking. They're also very high DPS. Crazy DPS is Fury. This means you're going to see at least probably 5 DPS and 5 tanks. Your raid's going to have like 10 warriors. So there's going to be a lot of warriors. If you want to get into a raiding guild, rolling a warrior is a good choice. In PvP and PvE, they can be very powerful both ways. Doesn't matter, they can be great in PvP. However, the downside of this is the PvP and PvE specs are vastly different, right? You'll be swapping on a very regular basis if you intend to PvP frequently, meaning you will be paying a lot of gold in respecking. I think the fee gets up to 66 gold if I remember, which doesn't sound like a lot. 66 gold, right? Whoa, 66, that's like a drop. But no, 66 in Classic. Yeah, that's a ton, considering Epic Riding costs 1,000, so you're looking at a huge chunk of money every time. But the good thing about them is the fact that every one of their specs is viable for something, so this can't be said about most classes. Warriors kind of stick out for that meaning. As for leveling though, they are the worst class. Worst, if they might be the worst, right? They can only kill one target at a time. They're basically useless without somebody else helping them. But very, very slow leveling process. If you truly want to raid though, like I said, rolling a warrior will get you into a raiding guild almost guaranteed because you need a lot of warriors. They're good in so many positions. They're going to take up a lot of slots in your raid. Good in that aspect, but it'll take you quite some time to hit level 60. Now, moving on to Druids. Druids are fun because they have so many specs and options for gameplay. But the real downside to this is that in any serious aspects when it comes to raiding, you'll be outright expected to heal. When it comes down to PvP, your options open up a whole lot more for a fun experience. You can do a lot of things in PvP that in PvE, you wouldn't really be expected to do. You're basically a healer in PvE. But when it comes to PvP, less serious content like dungeons or anything, you can full out well and try the other specs, right? Because Boomkin is, of course, a fun spec, right? It's a fun spec. Feral's fun. Bear tanks are very infrequent, but, it's fun again if you like tanking. Bear tanks, they can be good. I do remember from my own Classics experience, we had a bear tank I knew that was tanking Blackwing Lair. I wasn't in that guild, but I knew he was tanking Blackwing Lair, and I was surprised to hear that because, most people wouldn't take a bear tank to that. But overall, though, very fun class in the fact that they have a lot of options, but again, you're stuck doing healing. You also get the benefits while leveling of travel form, right? It's not nearly as fast as a mount, but it's definitely a lot faster than walking. This is one of the reasons they excel so well in PvP, because, heck, for Warsong Gulch, using a Druid, since they've changed it, how you slow down with the flag and stuff, not quite as fast. But before, Druids could carry the flag so fast, which, being a Classic server, they'll be able to do the same thing again, making them a lot of fun. But again, if you do not want to heal, I don't really recommend playing a Druid, because you'll almost be expected to in most serious cases. Now, on to Priest. Probably the best healing class in Classic, and remain that way throughout most of Classic, right? They are really useful in PvP as well, but the main issue is that typically in PvP they are just healing and can't really do much to kill someone on their own. Really, the damage of healing classes and stuff was not that high back then. Like now, a healer, a skilled healer can basically do the output damage of a DPS in most PvP instances and stuff. It's crazy how much it's changed so much. But yeah, healing back then meant you were pretty much gonna do that, especially on Priest. They can't really do much else when it's in PvP. Shadow is viable. It was viable back in Classic, right? And on occasion, you can get into a guild as a DPS Priest. But it's going to be very few and far between. Don't really expect it to happen. Expect that you're probably going to be a healer. They are a strong support class, though, so when they're doing content like leveling or anything involving world content, they pair really well with others, as soloing stuff can be pretty difficult, especially that if you're trying to save on fees and you spec into Holy again, so you're deciding not to spec into Shadow, soloing is going to be very, very hard. Eventually, the Benediction and Anathema, the staff, the really cool staff we all remember, is a really awesome quest line. It's limited to priests only, but it gives them this great weapon, and they can use it for a very long time, right? You'll be using Benediction for ages. If you like healing and are already playing a healer, though, it's a really good idea to maybe think about giving a priest a try. Maybe you're a Resto Shaman right now, or a Holy Paladin. You might want to try priest, because they're very, very good in the healing aspect when it comes to vanilla. That's mine. Hunters for every item, right? Right, we're moving on to hunters. That's mine. The saying, this is a common Classic joke, because hunters benefited from a lot of different stats. So hunters laid claim to just about anything. They could use it, right? Anyways, hunter was a very fun class, as your pets actually had to be fed, so they loved you. Their DPS was reliant on how you treated them. Pets had different attack speeds, which made a rare from Badlands the best pet, because it had a 1 second attack speed compared to most other 2 second attack speeds. When a pet died, you had to res it. They would be upset. You'd have to feed them. Things like that. If you let them go and didn't feed them, eventually they'd run away. You also didn't get to just shoot your guns and bows, you had to get ammo to shoot them, and you even had a special ammo pouch or arrow quiver to hold all this ammo. Now for their standing and rating, they are pretty low on the meters, not really good DPS wise, right? They're way down there, but still very fun, and they are required because tranquilizing shot ability, it's basically a necessary thing for some mechanics. They can also be used for kiting in raids because they move so fast with aspect of the cheetah and stuff. And they are also a lot of fun because they get the Rock Dalar and Lock Dalar items for the quest line. It's a really neat quest line. Again, it's just like Benediction for priests, but it's specific to Hunter. And leveling, they are the most superior class, as they can solo a whole lot of stuff that most other classes couldn't possibly do. The world first, right? World first for leveling in the original WoW. Okay, so the original WoW, world first was Hunter. Most of the private servers, the level 60, the first one is Hunter. It's just Hunter's level fast and classic compared to many other things. So if you're looking to get to level 60 before anyone else, Hunter. Now moving on to Paladins. Paladins. They are 3 very distinct specs for tanking, healing, and DPS. But in most cases, when it comes to PvE, they will mainly be Healadin, right? You're basically going to be expected to heal when it comes to any serious PvE content. In less serious content, they can tank, but in a higher tier of serious content, it isn't really viable for them to tank, as they have no taunt ability. There was never a taunt, so they can't really taunt swap or anything like that. If they had that, maybe, but nope. Paladins can occasionally be seen using Ret in raiding content. They aren't comparable to other melee DPS though, so it's not very often you're going to see a Ret Paladin. And if given the option, you would give a warrior the gear over the Paladin, because the warrior is going to get much more benefit in DPS than the Paladin ever could. So they're going to lose out on gear too. The main thing that makes Paladins so good though is the awesome blessings they provide to the raid. However, the blessing lasts only 5 minutes, so assuming Blizzard follows the same rules, releases the content patches as they would, you'll be blessing raids like crazy. With a 40-man raid that lasts only 5 minutes, it's going to take you, it's not going to take you very far. You're going to bless somebody at the beginning of the raid, and then you're going to have to bless them again by the time you get to the end of the group, right? It's just going to be a constant stream of blessing people. And, but they are really good because at level 40, they get a free mount, much like their Warlocks, right? And then at level 60, when, the quest line appears and you can do it and all that stuff. Again, this is related to... No, it's not. Dire Maul, I think, right? And then at level 60, later in the patches, you get the 100% questline mount, right? Still costs a lot to complete, but again, much less than the actual 100% speed mount cost. They wear plate, but in most cases, Paladins are seen wearing cloth, because cloth gives better benefits to healing than plate gear on most times does. So you'll be seeing them decked out in a lot of cloth gear. And on top of that, Paladins can only be Alliance in Classic. So if you're wanting to play a Paladin, expect to be an Alliance player of some type. Even if you're playing Horde now and you're on your Blood Elf Paladin, you're like, man, I want to play a Paladin in Classic. Well, look forward to being an Alliance Paladin. So, fun class overall though. Really like Paladin in vanilla because buff it in, really. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was great. And the last class is Shaman, right? Shaman, which is the Horde-only class in, against Paladins. Shamans are typically used as healers again, so like their Alliance counterpart, despite having other spec options, they're going to be stuck healing. That's pretty much how it goes. You're going to be a healer just like the Paladin was. And the reason, again, is the specs aren't really viable. It's not so much... I guess the Paladin specs weren't viable too, but the Shamans are even less viable in that aspect. And the real reason Shamans are so powerful in Classic is for the totems, right? The totems they provide to other classes, the buffs, crazy. It's hard to argue which is stronger though, the Paladin buffs or the Shaman totems. So the Paladin buffs or Shaman totems, it's really, really hard to say. They're pretty close. This comes from the fact though that melee DPS are the strongest real DPS in the game, and Shamans provide Wind Fury totem, and Wind Fury totem for the longest time had no cap on how it could proc. So when you would proc a Wind Fury, right, you could proc another Wind Fury off that, meaning theoretically you could proc Wind Fury constantly and one-shot a boss. It's a technical chance to happen. Very, very small, and like you're talking billions of a percent, but it's a possibility. So, a very powerful buff indeed for many of the melee classes, meaning multiple shamans are used in a raid. You're spreading them out throughout the groups, everybody gets a buff, everybody wins. In PvP though, they aren't very strong. Now, they are very fun in PvP, especially if you can get a really amazing gear, because before there was like Wind Fury one-shot things you could see where somebody would wear a very powerful two-hander and they would slap somebody very low geared, and of course Wind Fury procs and you one-shot them. It's fun to see, but overall they're quite weak in PvP. There are fun builds though that you can do. Now, as a surviving class, right, they're a very strong support surviving class, very hard to kill. Shaman's got a lot of HP, a lot of armor, as well as really good healing. Just very, very powerful overall. Really fun class though, but if you want to play Shaman, remember you're going to be limited to Horde. Anyways, there are many things that could change before Classic actually releases. Maybe, I don't know what degree they will change Classic, right? They say they want a Classic, but gosh, it's hard to say at this point. It could be just about anything. We don't know. It's still a very long time away before it actually comes. But based on the posts we keep seeing left and right, I feel like no matter what happens, somebody will be mad about something at the end of the day. I hope this was in some way a good look at what you expect from each class, and maybe gives you an idea of what you should be trying, or maybe in your head what you might give a whirl when it comes to Classic's release. At the end of the day though, no matter what you do, play what you enjoy and have fun doing it, right? If you want to play a balanced Druid, even though it's garbage, do not let anybody tell you that you can't be a balanced Druid. Find a way, right? Somebody will take you. Just show them. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.